Adam Kinzinger is taking time out of his busy morning for us. Congressman, good morning to you.
I'll tell you what, it feels like January. It's even cold in D.C. When I left yesterday, Illinois, it was like, 10?
Yeah.
12?
Yeah. And had you tried to get out a day earlier, you might have found yourself sitting for a while, too.
Yeah, no kidding. Or off the runway, one of the two.
So that was wild. So what kind of climate we got in Washington other than, the political
cold day,
climate?
But a hot climate, that's for sure.
All right, what's your take on this circus that's about to get rolling today?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Democrats have decided that they're going to press forward, and the fact that this is now public, they're going to call it an inquiry. The reality is this is the impeachment process. So I look at it this way, at this point now, all the burden is on them. When you make that decision that this is worthy of bringing it out into public and, bringing all these people forward, if you're going to go after what's the old saying, if you're going to go after the king, you better win or something like that, or
right.
It's going to backfire on them. And, I'm looking at it going, okay, fine, burden of proof is on them. And let's see what they bring out. But obviously, it's not something I'm supportive of. But it's being done. That's when you tell anybody, by the way, elections have consequences. This is the kind of thing you mean, and it matters.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example because you hear that little bon mot thrown around a lot. Oh yeah, elections have consequences. Okay, that just means I'm not going to get what I want. No, it means things like this happen.
Yeah, and you think about some of the opportunities we had to make a change in the past, and people would say that what we were doing was either not conservative enough or too conservative, and we couldn't get things passed when we had the majority. So now we don't, and we're seeing a lot of liberal attempts to do things. The only good thing about this impeachment process is the Democrats haven't been able to do anything else. And the unfortunate part is that includes funding the government. That includes taking care of our military. And so all the work that needs to be done out here right now, like what's called the National Defense Authorization Act, which we haven't not passed in 50 years, we're threatening to not pass it now because everything is just shut down, basically an impeachment.
And with that, the National Defense Authorization Act not going through, what is that? What are the ramifications of that?
There's huge, because what that does is that basically authorizes new programs, continuation of programs, the research we need. We all know that we're still the greatest military in the world, no doubt, but the Chinese have come to parity with us on things like supersonic missiles. They're beating us on things like artificial intelligence, which has a big impact on defense and cyber issues. They have the ability, or they're working on the ability to take down our carriers in the Pacific, which would extend their range of influence, and same with what the Russians are doing with cyber and space issues. And this slows down our ability to move forward on closing that gap and exceeding that gap. And so we can spend all the money we want out here, but if you're not authorizing the new programs, that money ends up basically not being spent, going to waste. And then we sit around and wonder why the Chinese have caught up. Now, those are just, defense is the most important thing we do. All that is being just swallowed up right now in this impeachment fight.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, there doesn't seem to be any attention on anything else, at least from one side of the political aisle.
Well, there isn't. And, look, I'll have a hearing today in my Foreign Affairs Committee, and we'll have a markup in our Energy and Commerce Committee. Nobody will have any idea that that's been done. It will not get to the floor. And if it gets to the floor, it's never going to go to the Senate, because the Senate is going to be, I expect the Democrats are going to impeach the president. So it's going to go and shut down the Senate for that trial. Obviously, it's destroyed any goodwill between Republicans and Democrats, which for the long term is dangerous and bad. And this is where we're at. So, it's going to be a clown show out here for the next, I don't know, however long they plan to do this. And we'll see what happens. Yeah,
what do you figure as far as length on something like this goes?
It's hard to tell. I expect, actually, this may go for the next, and this is just kind of a gut feeling, the next month or 2 months, because, they're going to want to call people forward. You think of all the show that they get out of it, and, Adam Schiff can be famous and all this kind of stuff.
Which seems to be the main ingredient in many of this.
It does.
Many of these things.
I used to get along with him pretty well, but he became, because, he was the Intel chairman, and the Intel committee up until recently was very bipartisan and just focused on, the things, the everyday things that our intelligence community does that we don't know about. But then it just got, swallowed up with him being on TV and making this his thing, and it's shut down. I honestly, the most important committee in Congress is Intel, and that's been, broiled with impeachment, and they should be doing things like authorizing actions in certain areas and defending the American people, and instead it's this.
Speaking of that, last time you and I got together to talk, all hell was breaking loose between Turkey and Syria. There were people who were genuinely, including yourself, not pleased with the president's decision-making on how all of that went down. Where do we stand with that now? That kind of got knocked off the front page.
Yeah, it did, but it's still bad. It's still really bad. I got back from Georgia, the country. I was there last week, and that's really the frontier in the fight on freedom. About 1/5 of it is occupied by the Russians. I went up to the Russian line. And, they are, I'll tell you, the Georgians are among the most pro-American people I've ever seen. And they want to be part of NATO. The Germans are resisting it because they don't want to tick off the Russians because, the Germans are pretty weak. And but the Turkey thing sent a bad message. And it was a bad message to our allies, our potential allies, and to our enemies that America's in retreat. So I spent a lot of time stressing to the people of Georgia, for instance, that America is not in retreat, that we, are stronger than we've ever been, et cetera. But it's bad. Now we're finding out that the Turks, we have on video potentially a absolute extrajudicial killing, which is a war crime. And so I'm glad the president has somewhat reversed his decision in terms of leaving some troops in the oil areas of Syria because, it's important to have that intelligence on the ground. But long-term with Syria, the worry is, the Turks are there. The Russians are basically patrolling with the Turks on the southern border of NATO. Bashar al-Assad's coming back. It's a really bad situation. And frankly, as a Christian myself, looking at the murders that are happening there, I just, my heart breaks for these people, especially the Syriac Christians caught in the middle of this.
Yeah, and like we said, this one got totally knocked off the front page after a short bit of runtime, leading people to think, well, I guess everything's fine there now, right?
Yeah, and it's not. And, look, I'm not going to sit here and just continually criticize the president's decision. I made my voice known, and that's my job to do, and I'm going to continue to do it. I think he reversed himself enough that it's a good decision to have reversed himself. But, you look at what's going on in Iraq right now and Lebanon, a lot of it is a rebellion against Iranian control. Some of it is actually Iranian influence, and we're in a tough position right now. And I worry long-term because, again, where chaos is, you can have the Russians, you can have the Chinese, you also can have terrorists. And the reason we've been so safe since 9/11, with few exceptions, is because we're fighting terrorists over there. They haven't changed their desire to kill us. We've just changed the location that we're killing them.
Yeah, which seems to be a fairly prudent move.
It's better than them doing it here.
Absolutely. And you talk about having your voice be heard. I thoroughly enjoyed your op-ed for the Rip-On Forum magazine for Veterans Day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it's reminding people that, a lot of times we say, thank you for your service, veterans. And as a veteran, I appreciate that, and I know the veterans do. But it's making sure we don't leave them behind. And especially one area I'm getting very passionate about is, we're doing a good job of giving veterans the payments they need, the money they need, but we're not doing a good job of empowering them after their service. And, a lot of veterans come back and they think their best days are behind them, that their best performance to the country was done at war. And I think your future is in front of you. And I think that's why a lot of veterans suffer depression, is because they think that basically the best part of their life is over. And we need to remind people that's not the case. I've seen great veterans do fantastic. I'm friends with Marcus Luttrell, who's the lone survivor.
Oh, yeah.
And the work he's doing for veterans now helps him to find purpose, in a world that knows him as the guy that was the only one that survived a big battle.
Yep, really, really impressive guy, too. And, I follow him, and when he has something to say, believe me, a lot of people should take a minute and read it. Because here's a guy who knows his stuff. Congressman, as always, I know you're very, very busy. I appreciate you carving time out of your schedule for us. Have a great rest of the day, and, keep the heat turned down, will you?
Yeah, have some of that coffee pie, brother.
You got it. Thanks for your time.